Thanks, Alan, for joining me today. To start, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course, yeah. So I'm Alan Gordon. I'm a business analytics major at the University of Notre Dame from just outside Dublin, Ireland. And this year I'm running our student-run investment fund, targeting VC investments, usually early stage, like seed Series A.
Awesome. Yeah, really excited to chat with you today about Notre Dame Venture Capital. Kind of curious, like, how did you first learn about the Oregon campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was a freshman here, I worked on my own startup. So I was like a health tech type play, and it grew to 8 students at the top. And it was really through that I first became interested in VC. I met a couple of investors for my own project, not so much for funding, but just more for advice. But got really interested in that other side of it as well, investing in startups and advising startups. So then in my sophomore year, I interned with Battery Ventures for about 10 months. Absolutely loved it. Did everything from sourcing to diligence. Just a great experience. And then also kind of in that sophomore year, I first heard about Notre Dame Venture Capital through really the leader of the club that year was one of my friends here. So that's how I got involved. Became a project team member straight away. I might explain more about what that is later. And then, yeah, just due to the kind of battery experience plus the project team experience, it kind of made sense for me to be the leader this year, alongside my co-leader, Tony.
Awesome. And before we dive into the questions, can you just share some more background information on the org? Like, I'm curious, like, what's the fund size? Maybe like, what's your typical investment size? How frequently you're investing? Things like that.
Cool. Yeah. So Notre Dame Venture Capital is the university's student-run venture capital fund. And it has 2 main goals. The first one is on the education side. So any student, any major can join the club if they're interested in learning more about venture capital. We'll do weekly guest speaker presentations, weekly workshops, that kind of thing, just to upskill all of our members, to get them ready for internships and hopefully full-time jobs as well. And then the other side of it is obviously the investment side. So we have a small portion of the university endowment that we can invest out of. Typically, we invest between 5 to 10K in any one company. But the catch is that in follow-on rounds, we can up that depending on valuation increase, etc. So we've gone up to kind of 50, 60K in one investment as our max so far.
And how frequently are you guys investing? Is it like 1 or 2 investments per semester, or how does that work?
Yeah, so this semester, for example, we're probably looking at five investments, I'd say. We've done kind of 3.5 already, let's say.
Cool. And kind of curious, like, are you only allowed to invest in Notre Dame affiliated companies, or is this open to investing in anyone?
Yeah, so we can invest in anybody. That being said, just because we're kind of affiliated with the university, a lot of our deals will come from alumni, ND founders, and that kind of thing. So, like, for sure, the majority of our investments are ND affiliated.
Awesome. And what are you guys looking for in startups before you make an investment?
Yeah, so we're very generalist in terms of industries. Like, we've done industry reports on everything from open banking, generative AI, gig economy, on the kind of software side, right till, like, you know, your renewables, transport, housing on the more physical side. So we're very open to anything. Yeah, very generalist.
Cool. And what does, like, your investment process look like? Like, how do investments get done?
Yeah, so there's kind of two ways we do it. The first is we have 10 project teams, and each one of those consists of like 5 students plus a student leader. And they work pretty closely with one of our alumni at one of the top firms in VC. So the goal of those project teams is really they'll pick out an industry together with their VC partner, and they'll do a deep dive on the industry first, put an industry report together. Then they'll kind of go into more of the sourcing stuff, maybe compile like 20, 25 interesting companies in that industry, kind of once they know the background about it. From there, they'll do their diligence on each of the companies, narrow it down to maybe they're like top 5, 6 companies, do further diligence on all of those. and then narrow it down to like the top 1 or 2 to do investment memos on at the kind of end of the semester. And then we'll hopefully do a deal, obviously, in 1 or 2 of those. So that's the first way. And then the second way is more kind of warm intros. So we have a lot of ND investors, ND founders out there. So we'll get deals often through them as well. And the difference with those ones, just because we can be a little bit more confident in kind of quality of the startup, etc. We can kind of fast track their diligence. For example, I literally just got one about an hour ago. So that's an edtech startup, came through like a nice warm connection we have, raising a new seed round. So that one we can go kind of straight to one of our project leaders and say, hey, can you just do diligence on this company kind of within like 2-3 weeks? And we'll kind of have it done that way.
Cool. And what would you say is like NDVC's value add to startups in your portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we know like our check size is absolutely tiny, especially like in the current environment. Like when a seed round can be upwards of 5 million, it's like, what's 10K gonna do? So yeah, the big value add we bring, and we kind of make this clear when we're trying to invest in companies, is if you kind of take our investment, it opens up the entire Notre Dame network. So one of the things we're big on as a club actually is engaging all of our alumni, both founders and investors. So we have we have a Slack, and then also just a kind of Google Drive, Google Sheets ecosystem with over 1,800 people on it now. So if you kind of take our little check, what we're like delighted to do is if we see any good fits there, both for like hiring employees, but also further investment opportunities, we can make connections all over the place, which is kind of our real value add.
Cool. And then I'm kind of curious about the diligence process. So it seems like you guys do a lot of research on these companies beforehand. I guess like, do you also speak with the founder and get more information from them before you invest? Or it's like you make a decision based on the public information that you have, plus maybe data points from other investors or founders in your network who maybe have recommended that company? I guess like, how does that work?
Yeah, all of the above. So whenever we can, we'll speak to the founder like multiple times if possible. Because we kind of have those warm intros a lot of the time, it kind of works out that founders are pretty open to talking to us, which is great, both from kind of our point of view, but also the founder. We have a lot of great students who give great advice as well. So it kind of works both ways. And then in terms of the kind of more ordinary stuff like VCs go through, market sizing, competitors, all of that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, we try and do as much as we possibly can, both founder side and just kind of paper side.
Cool. And kind of curious, like, what do you see as like the biggest opportunities to improve NDVC and how you guys invest and support founders? Yeah.
So kind of one of our big goals for this year is actually to kind of bridge the gap between the VC community on campus and then the entrepreneurial community. From what I've seen in kind of my freshman and sophomore years, the two communities are a little bit split. Not that there's any kind of rift, just they don't really engage that much together. And one of the nice things about myself and my co-leader, Tony, we both, in our first 2 years, did a lot of work over at the Idea Center, which is the University Entrepreneurship Center. So that's kind of our background. And then we bring that to the VC club. We already know everybody over at the Entrepreneurship Center, so we can kind of try and bridge that. So on that, we've just this year made our first investment in a student startup. So that's something we're really pushing as well, is to really support the kind of student entrepreneurs on that side. But also, we're setting up internships all of the time for student startups, bringing kind of more students on board to boost growth and that kind of thing.
Cool. And now I wanted to sort of transition to questions to help students who want to join the NDVC internal team. Is there like an application process to join this club, or is it pretty open?
Yeah, so we're kind of happy to be open to absolutely anybody. So what we do is literally we have weekly meetings. If once you kind of get on our email list, which honestly we have about 2,000 students on it right now, so I think about 25% of the campus. So yeah, you can turn up to any of our meetings. We'll have awesome guest speakers pretty much every week, and it's just great to learn from them. For our first year students, especially, who might not go for like a project team application, just being an active member that way is a really good way to develop like kind of the basic skills. And then kind of going one step further, we have our project teams. So this year we have 10 project teams, each with like 5 or 6 students on them. So that's application based. And kind of for like context, we have right now, I think 60 students on project teams, and we'll get like probably over 100 applications now. So we're working on actually new project teams for next year as well, just to get more people involved.
Awesome. And what have you historically looked at on those applications? Is it just showing your interest in venture capital and startups, or what do you guys look for?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we know a lot of our students are freshmen and sophomores who might not have had the like chance to do internships in VC yet. It's kind of a notoriously hard industry to even do an internship in, let alone full time. So we have to be open to kind of other things. So kind of some of the questions we'll ask are like, is there a certain industry you're interested in right now, and why? That'll just kind of give us a sense of kind of what sort of spaces our project team should be looking at and kind of where the best fits will be in terms of students. And then we'll kind of ask more of the general questions as well. Kind of, have you got any experience in tech? Like, tell us about your interest in tech. I think that's probably one of the biggest focuses. Maybe not even so much interest in venture capital, but more interested in tech in general, interested in startups, and that kind of thing is what we kind of try filter for.
Makes sense. And then I think you mentioned there's like industry partners that work with these project teams. Can you talk about like who some of those industry partners are? Are they always VCs? Are they other people? And do they change like every semester or every time you're doing this?
Yep. Yeah. So this semester, the kind of big name ones, we have like Andreessen Horowitz on board for one of our project teams. We have Bessemer on board for one of our project teams. 20VC, that's Harry Stebbings' firm over in London, is another of our project teams. So 10 project teams, kind of each with a firm such as those. And then historically, they've all been venture capitalists. That said, we are actually working on one for next semester that will be a founder team. So one of ND's unicorns, actually, that one of the kind of co-founders of that showed interest in leading a project team. So we're working hard to get that set up for kind of more the entrepreneurial type students who we're also trying to attract to the club.
Cool. And what does the commitment look like for those firms? Is it just like meet with the students on the project team like once a week, once a month, or how do they interact? Yeah.
So we try and make it kind of as little as possible or as much as possible. So let's say for our partner at the VC firm, the only things we require is a kickoff meeting with the entire team where you'll introduce kind of yourself, your firm, and the industry you want the team to focus on. And then the other requirement will be at the very end. The team will present you the investment memo. You kind of go through that with them, talk over kind of things you like, things you don't like, try and help them for next time, I guess. And then in between those two kind of things the VC would have to do, it's really up to them how much they'll be involved. The thing I would say is, because our 10 project teams are like, they're all ND alum, all interested in the club and what we're doing, most of them are much more actively involved than just the 2 meetings. Some of them every week, some of them once or twice a month, but pretty regular contact with the teams.
Awesome. And last question, is there anything I didn't ask about that you think is important to know for a founder considering taking investment from NDVC or someone who wants to join the internal team?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I guess for the first one, founders looking to take capital from us, one thing we're definitely very big on is providing you with basically students for free to boost your growth. So for example, one of our most recent investments, a company called In-Person Donations, very early stage, but we've already got a couple of students working with that founder now on marketing, sales, and kind of market research as well. So aside from us kind of connecting you with further investors, we're pretty good at trying to help you build a team, especially if you need just like more hands on the job. And then on the internal team side, I think one thing we're really trying to push right now is to get more students than just the business students involved. Historically, because venture capital is kind of probably known as a very business kind of finance industry, it tends to be a lot of business school students will join our club.
Yeah.
But we're really trying to move away from that. We're looking at kind of, a lot more engineering students. That's absolutely key for understanding the actual tech. And then pretty much any major we're open to as well. So we're kind of, I think we've improved that by about 20% this year, which is a good start. And we're still trying to push that one as well.
Awesome.
And actually, if you don't mind, the last thing I'll say is just a couple of kind of investments to highlight might be interesting for some of the listeners. Is like kind of one of those we're proud of recently is called Fireside. Mark Cuban is a co-founder from Shark Tank. So that was a really big deal for us to get involved in. They've also gone on to raise further rounds, which we were able to get involved in too. So that's probably our biggest name so far. But we've also, just in the last year or two, we've had our first acquisition. As I said earlier, our first student startup investment, which we're really trying to push to build the entrepreneurial community on campus as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Great way to finish. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.